Howdy there, hoops heads. Welcome into the latest episode of the darndest, tootinest sports podcast on the internet with your host with the most, James the Jet, and America's favorite bitch-ass white boy, CProc.
Why?
Turn it back to the Wild Wild West. That actually is a nice segue to our first topic of this episode. Welcome in everybody once again.
Welcome.
We've tied the bow on the All-Star break. Quite the odd All-Star game, I would say. It was very much a mutation hybrid of the trends we see in the NBA now, where it's just threes and dunks pretty much. I mean, as I heard a stat somewhere in the following days after the game that there was one basket that got, I can't remember if it was attempted or made, probably made, because attempted, which sounds horrible, but probably made. There's one basket that wasn't a dunk / layup or a three.
Wow.
I mean, and with like accelerating the trend of people pulling up for threes from the opposite tunnel onto the court, it was a very, very odd All-Star game, and I think we had a fun time setting it up in the last episode, but it was quite the weird one, I thought. What about you?
Yeah, it was kind of. I mean, I kind of liked the format a little bit, like dunk contest being at half.
That I liked, yes.
Yeah, that was cool. But overall, I think the dunk contest was a little lackluster. The game was actually pretty good, though. I'm not gonna lie. But overall, I think it was with all things considered, it was a decent All-Star weekend.
What they had to deal with just to get the game on the court, it was a success. We can label it a success and be fine. But it was definitely weird.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so let's look forward to the second half, chat. What are your storylines to watch for?
Yeah, some of the storylines that's going on and that I see going on in the second half of the season is, well, for one, I think Dallas would be a top 5 seed in the West.
That's quite the lofty call.
I think they, in the beginning of the season, they were terrible, right? They had a lot of injuries. KP wasn't playing, and then the virus has took a lot of their players out as well. Now that they're getting like their core back, you've seen them play a lot better. KP and Luka are looking like a dynamic duo again, and in their last 11 games, I think they won 9 before the All-Star break. So I think they're only going to continue to get better, and the rest of the West better be on notice.
That game winner he hit in the Boston game, I think it was a TNT doubleheader. Oh, that was pretty.
Luka's the problem, man.
And that was who hit the one down the opposite for Boston? Was it Jalen?
Jalen hit
Tatum? That. Yeah. I can't remember which one.
No. It was Jason that hit that.
Okay. Yeah, like it was like, so I think it was like Luka hit one, and then they went down, and Jason Tatum hit it, and then they went down again, and Luka hit the big one to win it. I was like, they're getting that swag back.
Yeah, it's coming back, man. Another one of my predictions, James Harden, he's currently leading the league in assists. And I think with him continuing to play the lead guard role, and with the addition of another high flyer like with Blake Griffin, the rich just keep getting richer. His assist numbers are only going to continue to either to stay the same or even climb. I think he's averaging like 11 a game per game right now.
He's just getting so many athletic people to run with him.
And he turned. I think it looks like he turned the clock back on DeAndre, right? Like he looks reinvigorated. He's playing.
And that's not like old player. It's not like rejuvenating the fountain of youth to an older player. That's bringing somebody back from the grave.
Yeah. And the crazy part, now he got his clipper running mate, Blake Griffin, who also is a hot flyer. But I think in his years in Detroit, he's rounded out his game. He's shooting threes. He's bringing the ball up. He's being a facilitator. So if he brings all of that to Brooklyn, I mean, good luck. Lastly, not lastly, I got two more. I think Andre Drummond will be a Laker before the trade deadline is over with.
Calling another shot.
Calling it. I think the Lakers have to do something. Andre Drummond is probably like the best player that's on the market right now, so why not go out and get him? And they could use him like how they used Dwight Howard. You know what I mean? He could be a better version of that.
Yeah.
And now lastly, they're gonna have the play-in tournament again, which is cool. I like that. And I was a little hard on the Wizards.
It's got a little bit more structure. It's got a little more structure now because now it's like an NCAA play. It's like an NCAA plan where it's like, here's the teams playing for the spot, go, and then we pick up the tournament. It's not like that whole bubble thing.
Yeah. And in last episode, I was hard on the Wizards, right?
Very much.
But I think the Wizards will make the play-in tournament, and if they continue playing like how they have been before the All-Star break, I think they'll play right into the playoffs.
And that's dangerous. They could be really dangerous because that bottom part of the East right now, it's the Knicks, the Hawks, the Pacers, and the Raptors. I mean, none of those teams have looked well. I mean, of those, our Knicks have been the most consistent one of the bunch.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Hawks have been this inconsistent train. That the Pacers got off to a hot start and they've just fell off a cliff. And then the Raptors did the opposite, but now they're kind of falling back down. So who knows what's going on? I mean, well, I'm sorry. That's probably a significant factor.
Yeah.
But, they're another one. They're starting to fall off a cliff too. So the door's certainly open for Washington.
Yeah. All right. So those are my predictions. What's going on in your crystal ball?
I'm going playoff years. You took a little from the East and a little from the West.
Mm-hmm.
My East one, I'm looking at this mess, this real log jam in the middle of the Eastern Conference. And you've got Miami, who we both like. Provided they all could stay on the court. We both like the Miami Heat. They're deep. They got good coaching. Jimmy Butler, when trusted to do so, could take over a game. A lot of young talent. Bam's just a rising star.
I love Bam.
Get better and better and better. Boston, they still got a lot of kinks to figure out, but they've been in the playoff picture all season. They're tested as much as they can be tested coming off the last couple seasons. So they're stuck in the mix there. Charlotte's they got off to a little bit of a rough start, but once LaMelo found his groove, they've just been a rocket ship.
Yeah.
Outside of the fact that they're still getting used to each other, it's been a little hard to slow them down. And damn if they aren't a fun watch every night.
I think they're like one of the funnest teams in the league.
Right. And then the Knicks are, they're in that playoff quadrant right now, but they're in a statistical tie with Charlotte. So they're also in this mix too. But I'm going to make it's probably not that much of a hot take because they all these teams kind of have a consistent record, but I'm going to guess that the Charlotte Hornets are going to get home court advantage.
Big on Charlotte.
I think the more time LaMelo gets on the court, he's only going to get more comfortable. He's always going to get more bravado coming out. And I think they'll probably wind up playing Boston, which means they're probably going to lose in the first round. But so I don't think that the home court lock will improve their fortunes as far as advancing. But I think they could get hot enough where they can charge Miami, they can overtake Boston, and they're gonna get some home court in the first round.
That'll be dope.
My other one, West wise, and this is gonna hurt me because I've been so high on the Jazz all season that, and I don't wanna rain on their parade before the parade even starts.
Yeah.
But the way Phoenix has been playing of late, I think Phoenix is going to make a charge at the number 1 seed. If not, not take it.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about Denver?
Denver's kind of hot too. I mean, if I'm looking at, at the time we're recording this, I'm looking at the standings. I mean, there's only 2 real good last 10 games records, and 2 of the standout are Phoenix and Denver.
Yeah.
And the other one, to your point, is Dallas.
Dallas, yeah.
So there's 3 that really have a good record over the last 10 games, and those are the 3 of them.
Yeah.
Phoenix is getting a charge for that 1 seed. Denver's getting back in that middle of the pack territory, and Dallas playing their way out of that hole they dug themselves. So that's kind of our hot takes, our predictions for the second half. Now I want to open the can of worms on a little bit of topics. It's something that's kind of turned into a hot trend in the NBA in recent years, and that's kind of this. We anyone who knows the NBA knows it's kind of always been a players' league. And there's no real secret to that. The head coach is more just like a personnel manager and figuring out the right mix of players to have at the court at the same time, as opposed to drawing up X's and O's, especially in this, in the ISO ball era where, the most player running that's not an ISO is a pick and roll. It doesn't take a genius on the clipboard to draw up a pick and roll. So with that, the evolution of how the game's gone, it's really the age of player empowerment is coming to a boiling point, and that kind of took us a life of its own this year with James Harden getting fat and playing his way out of Houston. Now PJ Tucker's getting all disgruntled, and they're like, okay, James Harden, I'm not gonna condone what you did get at Houston, but you're also James Harden.
Yeah.
PJ Tucker, you're nowhere near James Harden. What are you doing? You don't have the leverage to make this to make this play. And I mean this just goes back to LeBron and Durant. They make their super teams. They bring all their superstar all-star friends together and go ring chasing. I mean, so I want to get your thoughts on this. This player empowerment age. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. The inmates are running the asylum. Like, what do you? Is this good for the sport? Is it good for the league? What's like an honest take on this era we're in right now?
I mean, I don't know. I think what's going on in Brooklyn right now is explaining exactly, how you feel about, players having too much power. And I don't think something like that should happen. There should be more parity in the league. And I think that the NBA, they're trying different things to kind of like balance that power structure, because you don't want like the owners having too much power, and then you don't want the players having too much power. So they're trying things like the whole buyout market thing, but that's also generating super teams. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that person now has the ability to go anywhere that they want, including the best team in the league, if they got a roster spot.
Yeah, like we just talked about Blake Griffin.
Yeah, I think that the NBA still needs to do some tweaking to make sure that, like I said, there's more parity in the league, and these super duper teams can't be like so easily created. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know, like, how do you feel like these microwave rings where like people just team up and it's like, yeah, they're going to win because they have most of the talent on their team. So why wouldn't they win? You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly. It's a bad optic, and I will say I didn't like it when the Heat did it, but at the same time, the Heat were kind of playing different teams in the finals every year, so there was a little bit of different juice every year. They had the first year they made it was Dirk's finally getting the championship, so there was that to go with, and then the lockout season they're going up against the Oklahoma City Big Three, the engine before it really got its gas into it, because they all broke up and left. I still cry myself to sleep sometimes over that, because it's just that we just got this dream team ripped away from us too early. And then they went into those Spurs matchups where they exchange rings a little bit, and those are both very fun, which of course ended in Kawhi's kind of cementing his legacy amongst the big boys in the league. But and then it happens again with the Warriors, and the Warriors at first they were a super team, but they were a homegrown super team.
Yeah.
So you didn't mind it. It's a lot. A lot of people make fun of the bandwagon Warriors fans because they came out of nowhere and they're good, but they built that team.
Yeah.
And they're fun to watch because that was an organic championship team.
Right.
And then of course KD comes in and it's just like, oh well, I just hand him the trophy.
Yeah, just give it to him. Oh, you forgot Cleveland.
Cleveland, yeah, because on the other side of the ledger, they're playing the Cavs, and I don't so much get mad about the Cavs because Kyrie's such a space cadet that he doesn't. Kyrie playing with LeBron in that era, and then of course Kevin Love was there too, but Kevin Love never was really Kevin Love. He was just kind of a shell of Kevin Love, just coming on and grab some rebounds, hit some threes. So it didn't feel like even Chris Bosh in his reduced role coming to the Heat, Kevin Love still didn't elevate to that level.
Right.
In my eyes anyway. And but then so you kind of push him off to the side, and then you look at Kyrie, and he's such a space cadet and in and out of the lineup, and the guys don't necessarily always like playing with him. They love Kyrie, but they don't love playing with Kyrie.
Right.
Like everyone loves Kyrie, but no one actually likes to be with Kyrie. Yeah. And that one was so that one, it didn't have the same juice. Like they plowed this team together, just throwing all like it was. Yeah, technically a super team, but most of the time it was LeBron putting guys on his back and dragging them behind him.
Yeah, for sure. It was, and the Celtics too, but they were old though.
They were old, yeah. That was the Celtics was kind of like what the Karl Malone and Gary Payne go to the Lakers should have been.
Yeah.
Because it was the same kind of scenario. Older guys trying to get together, pool their talents, have one last push. And I mean, granted, they did get to the finals, but it obviously did not work out. And the Celtics, they did do the super team. I guess technically that maybe they were the first ones to do it, but like you said, it was a different vibe because they're all older. They were just at the end of their career just trying to get a ring.
Yeah.
The milk a ring out of whatever money was left in their pockets.
Yeah.
And then of course our current Lakers, which has the negative vibe to me because of the fact that LeBron went to the Lakers. You thought that he's going to this Lakers team with all this young talent. He's really going to pull him up. LeBron's going to be in this awesome position with Ingram and Kuzma and all these young guys that are really starting to get good at the right time, and he just kind of bails on them and doesn't want to play with them. Gets them all out of town, brings in AD, then all these really good role players decide to come to town too.
Yeah.
Especially this year, I fresh off a chip, they get Trez, who just won the 6th Man of the Year. They get Dennis Schroeder, who's a great 6th man.
Yeah. They get Wesley Matthews.
Matthews, phenomenal shooter, great defender. Well, great defender, maybe. Yeah.
He's a plus defender, I think. Yeah. Or was a plus defender. I don't know how he's faring over there in Laker Town. Yeah, man, I do think, like I said, the NBA does need to put some things in place to make sure like we don't see 8 superstars on one team. You know what I mean? Because 2 of them got bought out. You know what I mean? We don't want to see that. Like Brooklyn right now, for me, I mean, it's the chip goes through Brooklyn. Like, unless the basketball gods come and manipulate the NBA again, and take out some legs, which God forbid. But I don't see them losing to anybody. I don't see a team beating them.
Yeah, and I want to say the Sixers will handle them, but the Sixers can't shoot.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Who need to shoot today?
What's going on with Joel Embiid? He hyperextended his knee. I don't know how bad it is.
Right. If he's out there, done. They might go down to play in Charlotte in that 4-5 matchup.
Bro.
I'm calling it out. This is an extra call.
They might
Philly's Charlotte in the first 4-5 matchup. I don't know.
They might be in the playoff. The playing tournament. If Joel might lose every game to the offs, like
I lose every game because I got to play Ben Simmons at center.
Right. But yeah, man, I really feel like the NBA they need to step in and not kill it all the way, just modify it so it's like it's fair.
Yeah, and like, do you think like it's one thing with someone like James Harden or even LeBron, LeBron too to that extent, but someone like PJ Tucker, that should not be someone call their shots, right?
No. I mean, you signed a contract, bro. I don't think you have a no trade clause in PJ Tucker's contract. He's a great player. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's a good player. Like, I think any team would love to have him, but I don't think you need to be being disgruntled. You need, if you want out, go to the front office and tell them that, like, yo, I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be a man. Go upstairs and talk to someone. Don't weasel your way up to the media.
Right. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not gonna say he hasn't tried that. He probably did try that, and they just give him the runaround. So he's trying the media now. I don't know.
There's something fishy in the water down in Houston with the whole Deshaun Watson thing. Maybe the Rockets are stemming over into that too.
It's nasty down there. They cut Boogie Cousins for no reason. Like they had players like to replace him. I was watching a Houston game the other day. They had like a starting five and one player on the bench. Like, what?
Leading the league at minutes played being 30 games under 500.
But yeah, I don't know what's going down. I don't know what's up in Houston, man. It seems like it's going really sour over there, and I don't know how they're going to fix that. Right now is the time where we want to let you know where to reach us when you're not watching the show. Social time. You can hit us up at Hoops Boys Pod on both Instagram and Twitter. Come kick it with us, man. We're answering questions. We're posting memes. You know what I mean? We're active. So come get active with us. Hoops Boys Pod.
And up next, it's that most magical time of the year. It's finally come around to us, and it's actually going to happen this year. We're going to get you all the expert advice you need to be the king or queen of your bracket pool around your office. Stay with us, Hoops Boys Pod.
Welcome back to the Hoops Boys Pod. Jet here along with my co-host CProc, and today we have a guest expert. I just made that up. My boy Greg, and he's going to help us figure out what's what in college hoops.
Now let's look over some of the more noteworthy schools selected to dance this year. The top line seeds, of course, are Gonzaga and Baylor. It's been out in front all season, and followed by a very tough Illinois school, getting the third number one and maybe a little questionable number one seed in Michigan. Not totally sure. Greg, what's your take on the top of the bracket?
I think it's pretty legit. The Michigan, who is worthy of the one seed. What I would say now is there's some vulnerability. Isaiah Livers, who got hurt during the Big Ten tournament. That's a big loss if he's out. Nobody knows at this point. I don't know if they're keeping it close to the vest or they just don't know yet. But if he's out, that definitely it opens up the bracket. Let's put it that way. They're worthy of the seed, but now there's some question marks.
So first, I want to start with Wichita. I want to know if you think they can bring back the Magic of old.
So funny you say that. I am as down on Wichita as I've been in a long time. If you caught any American semifinal against Cincinnati, it was brutal. It was brutal on both ends. Cincinnati turned the ball over probably 3 times in the last 30 seconds. Wichita couldn't get it done. Alteri Gilbert, who transferred from UConn, he's been one of their better players. I don't think they're anywhere close to what they've been in the past. So I'm not seeing much out of them actually this year. And Drake, who they are playing, who we brought up last time we spoke, Drake has injury concerns himself, but if Drake is healthy, they're very good. Now I'm not sure which Drake team is coming, but if Drake is anywhere close, I'm heavy on Drake. Let's put it that way.
Okay, I got you.
Early upset bubble.
I actually don't like seed-wise. I actually don't think it is an upset. Like, I'll be surprised actually if Wichita is the favorite, because like I said, if you've seen them lately, it's been brutal. They've gotten some wins, but they don't strike me as anything possible of being able to make a run.
Okay. Do you think KU is overrated as the 3 seed?
I think KU is actually that's pretty appropriately seeded. They're not worthy of a 1 or a 2 seed. I wouldn't put them. I kind of expected a 3 or 4 seed coming in.
Mm-hmm.
They played well down the stretch, and I would have been curious to see if they didn't have virus issues, how they would have fared in their conference tournament. So I think that's a pretty legit place for where they should be. They're not
awesome.
Kansas of old, but they're no walkover either. So I think they did a pretty good job with Kansas.
Okay, cool. And lastly, my last storyline. Does VCU should Iowa be worried about VCU?
Well, I kind of touching on what we went on Wichita State. I'm in the same boat as VCU. I am anti-VCU all the way this year.
Yeah.
It's not Shaka Smart's havoc anymore. Same thing. If you saw them against the Bonnies today in the A10 conference championship, it was clear St. Bonaventure is a better team. And I think on that same token, Oregon as a 7, I think Oregon almost got helped by losing to Oregon State. And what I mean by that is, like, they're kind of under the radar now because they didn't win the conference tournament. Prior to that, Oregon had been rolling. So I actually think Iowa has a huge concern with Oregon if Oregon wins that first round match. And I actually think Oregon will beat Iowa in that second round. So that would be one of my big upsets early in the tournament.
That's a huge one. Call your shot early.
Call them a shot earlier. But no, they like Chris Duarte, their point guard, Figueroa, who was a transfer from St. John's. You could see minus, like I said, in conference tournaments, you can't teams. There's no correlation if like Oregon lost in the semifinals. There's no correlation that means they'll play poorly in the tourney. So I'm basing what I've seen out of Oregon the last 4 weeks, and they have the potential to make a run here. So we're going Ducks.
To transition from the west bracket to the south bracket, not that the geographic names of the regions mean anything this year. We're all playing in one city. But the first storyline I noticed in the south, and it's also kind of characteristic of all the brackets, is the committee for whatever reason really set up this potential buzzsaw into the second round for all the top seeds. You've got Gonzaga. Maybe for me looking blindly at the bracket, maybe they have the easiest one, Oklahoma and Missouri.
Completely agree.
And then you have Baylor. They've got a hot Carolina and always tough Wisconsin matchup awaiting them. You've got Illinois with the Loyola Saint Sister Mary's of old sitting there. Or
won't be an easy matchup.
Yeah. Or I don't know if you think Georgia Tech was a bit of a Fugazi at ACC champion, but they've got one of those two sitting on the other side, and then Michigan's maybe might have the worst one, LSU and St. Bonaventure. So, like, before we go specifically into the South, what do you think of these buzzsaws?
Yeah, so looking at the 8-9 seeds, North Carolina, Wisconsin, that's a loaded matchup. Wisconsin, it's funny. They don't remind me of a traditional Wisconsin team in the sense that their team who makes a run all the time. They seem to be an excellent tourney team, but that's not who you want as the 9 seed. So where I might think Wisconsin is a little down than past years, that's a nightmare for Baylor. And same with Carolina. Carolina has talent. They played much better down the stretch. And you look at some of the other 8-9 matchups, and again with Baylor, you do not want to play either one of them right now. Do I think Baylor wins the game? Yes. But that's 1 seeds are supposed to kind of have somewhat fairly easy road to the Sweet 16. Not exactly the case for Baylor. Brutal matchup, either way. The other 8-9 that is very intriguing is LSU, St. Bonaventure. And Chase, I know you touched on it earlier, watching LSU today. That was a great game, them and Bama. You came away from that game knowing that LSU is real. Both these teams are really good. Well, Bama's at 2 and LSU's an 8. What does that tell you? LSU gave them everything they could handle. So again, I think LSU, that's a bad. I don't want to say it's a bad seeding, but it's bad for the 1 seed because LSU is that's a monster. And St. Bonnie's to me has the look of a team that will have success in the tourney. They're guard oriented. They hit free throws. There's a sense of control at the guard position. So the game seems to, and again, I'm admitting I didn't see as much of them because there's not as many out of conference this year. But watching late in the year in that A-10 tournament, they were clearly the best team. And I think the commentators even spoke on that. Bonnie's is a really good team. This is not small town. If people think of them, oh, that's a huge upset. That wouldn't really be that big an upset no matter who they beat. I actually think this is a top 25 team. So those 8-9 matchups are good luck to the 1 seeds. You're going to have your hands full.
So in the South, we're going to play a clip from the last time you joined us right now. And we were talking about who could potentially scare Gonzaga and Baylor. And you said a potential nightmare matchup for Baylor was Villanova because of their proficiency shooting threes. And little do we have a potential Sweet 16 matchup, Baylor against Villanova. Let's play the clip right now and refresh our audience's memories.
We talk about Baylor in the same token. So Nova is not as good as the couple tournament teams. It's easy for us the last few years. Oh, Nova. But their upside is pretty high. So they lose to St. John's, who's put a nice second half together, tenacious on D. Then they come out against Marquette the other night and are basically a 1-possession game until halftime, and they hit about 10 threes in 11 possessions. So Gonzaga, Baylor, it's interesting. If I'm Baylor, Nova's the team I don't want to play because I feel like you have to shoot the three against Baylor. If you try to go in the paint and play with them, they'll turn you over 1,000 times. So Nova, again, it's not a huge upset because they're on the 1-2 line, but they pose a threat to Baylor from that. I think you're going to have to shoot from 3 and don't play to Baylor's strength. They'll turn you over 100 times. The Villanova team that we spoke about, this is kind of par for the course with the COVID season and all the uncertainty. So just as we thought Villanova would be a very tough matchup for a top team, Gillespie, the point guard, went out right before the end of the season, and it's clear as day they are not the same team right now. They're facing Winthrop as a 12 seed. Villanova got no favors there, so I actually don't think Villanova is going to get past that first round. It's not that Villanova does not have talent, but like any team, you lose the point guard. He's their emotional. He's their leader in every which way, and it was very clear against Georgetown and when they lost in the Big East tournament. This is, unfortunately for them, not the same team. So, Jay Wright obviously is an excellent coach, and I'm sure they'll game plan. But we're gonna have to scrap that original Villanova thought because they're coming in wounded, unfortunately for them.
So you're high on 1-loss Winthrop pulling that 12-5.
I wondered what they do with Villanova, and I thought a 5 was. I think it's pretty appropriate because they usually seed. They'll never take a team out of the tournament with losing a player, but Villanova, who would have been probably a 3 seed prior, I think they did a good job putting them in an appropriate place. But Winthrop is by no means a team they want to play in that first round. So it's trouble city for Jay Wright right now.
Speaking of upset, watching the South bracket, do you think Texas Tech should be on edge against Utah State?
Okay, so that's a very good matchup, both excellent defensively. I don't know if you've been able to see Keita from Utah State. He's a monster in the paint. Huge presence. I think he had 7 blocks in the conference semifinal the other night. It was an unbelievable performance. But they're not – last year where they went into the tournament, they were great offensively. They're not nearly as proficient. So that will not be an easy game. But I'm always confident in Texas Tech. They seem to get the job done. So I think that's an interesting matchup. But I do think Texas Tech will grind that one out.
Moving on to the Midwest now. Syracuse is a bit of a bubble team. Do you think they don't really deserve this bid? Is San Diego State kind of just going to overpower them and run away, or they're a legit Boeheim of old threat?
So I was pretty down on Syracuse all year, but if you've seen them, I must say, like if you've seen them the last 3-4 weeks, it's actually Boeheim's son. He's been lighting it up. He's been scoring 25 plus a game the last couple of weeks. So I think they earned their way in. That Virginia loss was an excellent game. It took a 3 at the buzzer. So I do think like Boeheim has a history of this. I think they've molded into form at just the right time. So that is a very good San Diego State team. That's a really good matchup. Those are two good teams. That should be a barn burner. It wouldn't shock me either way, the result of that game, because Syracuse is playing their best basketball right now.
And James? What are the other two stories out of the Midwest?
West Virginia is in at 3. Greg, how do you feel about that?
I think that's an appropriate seed. I've said this a couple of times already. I'm almost disappointed. I'm not angry at the committee. I think they actually, minus Gonzaga having a bit of a cakewalk bracket, I think they did a really good job. And I think West Virginia is exactly that. I wouldn't put them 1 or 2, and 3 seems just about right to me, because I think they're on that next level of teams. And interesting about them this year, they're big as usual. They're a little different. So most years, West Virginia is pure defense. They're actually surprisingly not as good defensively this year, but are more proficient on the offensive end. So they definitely could present problems, and they could easily make a run in that bracket.
Okay, awesome. And last but not least, there's a little bit of a shit show in the bottom with Clemson, Houston, and what's the last team? Rutgers, right. It's a little bit of a shit show down at the bottom with those 3 teams. How do you think that happened?
That to me, first glance, like that bottom of that bracket, that seems kind of weak. Now, Houston is actually pretty darn good. They brought in, if you followed them at all this year, they're transfer heavy. Quentin Grimes, who was a McDonald's All-American at Kansas, wasn't a bad player there, just never fully developed. And I think it changed over to Houston. So he was their best player. DeJon Jarreau came over from UMass. He's been a huge factor. So even most of the metrics, they're pretty solid. Now, I wouldn't say they're unbeatable by any means. And I think the American was weaker than usual. So I think, like you just touched on West Virginia, like I would take West Virginia in that matchup personally. Clemson, Rutgers at the bottom there. Again, I don't see that as the strongest. And I think I've rooted for Rutgers the last few years. And I just wish Rutgers last year was playing in this bracket.
Yeah.
They're still a good team, but they seem to really struggle, especially away from home. So I don't know how much faith I have them in a neutral court, not at the rack. So you are correct. That seems to be a weak bottom of that bracket. So I think San Diego, Syracuse, and West Virginia, I would take one of those 3 at the top part of that to get out of there, to go to the Elite 8.
Okay, awesome.
So we transition to the final region. That's like I hinted a little bit at the top. Michigan's kind of seems like the odd man out of the number 1 seeds, and they get set up with another buzzsaw second round matchup against the winner of LSU and the Bonnies. Is that another one? Is that something we should be on upset alert for Michigan going down in the second round?
100%. And the reason is, of course, it will be an upset seed wise. LSU and St. Bonaventures are very good. They both are. So I was surprised. It's like LSU today it was a phenomenal game against Alabama in the SEC final. They compete. They bring it. Like they really are aggressive. And St. Bonnie's, to me, watching that A-10 final, they're guard oriented. They're in control. They don't have many useless possessions. So yes, I do think that is a huge upset potential there. And especially with the health of Livers with Michigan, that's a huge loss if he's not able to play. We don't know that yet. But even full strength, they will have their hands full with whoever wins that matchup between LSU and the Bonnies.
Okay, awesome.
Do you think someone near and dear to all our hearts as Knicks fans, Georgetown's coming in a little hot? Do you think Patrick can lead the Hoyas to a 5-12 classic 5-12 upset?
I don't like admitting I'm wrong, but I kept thinking Georgetown. Again, I love Ewing. I love Georgetown. I didn't think they were going to keep rolling, and they absolutely smacked Creighton around, who's a very good team. So I mean, the way Georgetown has played the last few weeks, I guess you'd say, outside of getting destroyed by UConn, I don't see why they cannot. And Colorado is primed for the picking there. So I do think Georgetown could. Like I'm actually betting when we see the lines come out that I wouldn't be entirely shocked if Georgetown is actually a slight favorite in that game.
Do you think Texas got a little bit of a gift in that bracket? Are they primed for Final Four run?
I do not, and I think I think they are facing. That's a gauntlet at the bottom there. So if you look at, first of all, Michigan State, UCLA. Michigan State is playing their best ball right now. BYU, although not as good as last year, no slouch. So the winner of that game, that's a tough game for Texas right off the bat. Right off the bat, they could struggle with that. And then if you go to the bottom of that bracket, you're looking at, I think UConn has as good a potential to make a run in this tournament as pretty much anyone outside of the top seeds. Bama's no joke at 2. So I think Texas, I won't say they were jibbed, but it's a very tough pod they're in. So that's going to be a tough matchup for anybody to get out of. And yeah, good luck, Texas.
And you took the words out of my mouth a little bit. Between Michigan State getting hot and Tom Izzo having all the experience he does, UConn being back for the first time in 5 years, Rick Pitino being back.
Great job by the Gales.
Slated at a very low seed against a red hot Alabama team, but like of those familiar faces of old, is there any magic out of any of them? Izzo and MSU, Rick Pitino, UConn, any of them?
So I remember last time we spoke about this, and we actually were correct on this. So when we compared the traditional blue bloods who were struggling, I remember we talked about Michigan State, I thought had a chance. And if they got out of the Big Ten gauntlet, like the Big Ten this year was loaded. Even Northwestern, who didn't win a game in the conference for almost 2 months, like they were actually pretty decent. So Michigan State right now, to me, the guard play, I don't see this as a Final Four run, but I would not want to play them. Absolutely not. So I think Michigan State can do some things. And again, UConn is a 7 seed. Anytime you have an NBA lottery pick on the floor, in most games, he's going to be the best player. Yeah. Sanogo, the freshman forward is a beast. He's kind of coming into his own. So yes, I think those teams can definitely make a run.
Before we wrap up and move on to predictions, do you want to circle back and touch base on Loyola and Fugazi, ACC champ Georgia Tech?
Sure. So I'm actually impressed with Georgia Tech. So early in the year, they lost the game to Georgia State, who was not horrible this year, but they gave up a ton, and it was a sieve. They were a sieve defensively. Jose Alvarado, their senior point guard, has been phenomenal. He's an uber competitor. I'm actually very impressed. I don't think they have a high ceiling in this tournament, but they've done an admirable job. They really get after it defensively, and same with Loyola Chicago. So if you're hoping for an NBA game, don't turn that one on. We might be in the 40s in that game. And it's not pure ineptitude. It's just both these teams are excellent defensively.
Yeah.
So don't turn this on. Arkansas Colgate in another bracket, that might be in the 120s. This one could be in the 40s.
Well, before we get into predictions, I just want to say how cool it is that Patrick Ewing and Juwan Howard are both coaching their alma maters to the tournament. I think that's really dope. So yeah, we're gonna bring out our crystal balls and make some predictions about some bracket predictions. Greg, you want to start? Like, what region you want to start with?
Sure, let's go. We'll go to we'll start with the overall 1 seed Gonzaga.
Okay, awesome.
So I think Seth Davis said it on the selection show today. He put it best. He's like, I'm trying to look for a reason not to pick Gonzaga, just because you don't want to ride chalk with all the picks. It's not anything against them, and it is hard to make a case. Like I said, Oregon is a sneaky team that could make a run there. Creighton as a 5, that's not an easy matchup, but they'd be hard pressed. I think Gonzaga would have to play an awful game to not make it out of that bracket, because they're 8-9, as we touched on earlier. I think they're getting a cakewalk to the Sweet 16. So they're avoiding that potential danger in the second round. So I'd have to say Gonzaga has a pretty clear path.
Before we move on to the next one, do you think Virginia can get back on track after their little virus suspension in the ACC tournament, or are they kind of cooked?
I'm a fan of Virginia. I think their style of play, outside when they lost the 116 game, that outside of that anomaly, they're excellent defensively. Kihei Clark, their point guard, they have a true leader in him. Hauser, I think they can make a run if they're healthy. Again, they board well enough that if Gonzaga didn't shoot well that day, that they could be a factor. But I think they have potential. But the uncertainty of the virus, and again, Gonzaga's the real deal.
All right, so let's go down south. Who you got coming out of that bracket?
So this bracket to me, I think it's pretty loaded. So I'm gonna go on a limb here. I love Baylor, but I think there's danger, and I think there's a sleeping giant in that bracket. So they're going to face the winner of Carolina and Wisconsin, who, clear as day, that's not who you want to play in the second round. I do think Baylor probably gets through, but Carolina and Wisconsin, if you look at the metrics as well, like they're not your typical 8-9 seed. These are strong teams, so that's danger right off the bat. And I look at Purdue as the 4 seed, and I think I'm going to pick Purdue to go to the Final Four. Number of factors. Trevion Williams, their big man, is an absolute beast. He dominated. They lost an awesome game to Ohio State in the semifinals in the Big Ten. Williams dominated the second half. They had no answer for him. They're freshman heavy, which worries you. There's a lot of ceiling and a low floor, but another huge factor here is they're actually a home team. So because of COVID, the whole tournament being in Indianapolis, Purdue is a very loyal fan base. They're going to come in numbers. So I actually think on Purdue's good day, that's going to be my, if you want to call it, sleeper pick to the Final Four. I think they're loaded. I think if they shoot the ball well and they utilize Williams correctly, I'm actually going to take them to come out of that bracket.
Awesome.
And that's no slight to Baylor, but I do think that's basically a road game for them at Purdue.
Well, Purdue having a key big man that lends to your former nightmare matchup of West Virginia for them being heavy down low.
And the other factor that I definitely can't dismiss them, I don't know if you've seen them, they have their backup center. He's 7'4". Yes, you heard that correctly, 7'4", and he's not a stiff. Edie, he's a Canadian kid. Like he played really well. I forgot which game was a couple weeks ago. He scored over 20. He's coming off the bench. So, right. I mean, they really can hurt someone down low. If he stays out of foul trouble, him and Williams can be an absolute nightmare. So that's what I mean. To me, that's a sleeping giant in that bracket.
Literally.
Yes. Literally. Yeah, 7'4". Yeah, you look at him, and he even amongst huge college basketball players, you're like, what the heck is that?
Right.
and he's fairly fluid. Like I think in 2 years, you can see there's some rough edges to his game, but he's not, like, he has decent footwork. That I wouldn't want to play them.
Taco part 2 or blows Taco out of the water?
Blows Taco. I think offensively he'll blow Taco out of the water.
Because he moves well.
He moves well. Like again, if you can tell, like there's still some rough spots, but the potential is there. It's not a robot. Like he has decent footwork. Another great thing he doesn't bring the ball down. So a lot of big guys.
Yeah.
In the NBA we see that. 7-foot guys becoming 5 feet because they bring the ball down and rebound. He doesn't. Right. He has some fundamentals that you watch and you're like, oh boy, like this kid has some real potential.
Yeah.
And again, he's 7'4".
Right. Can't teach that.
Yeah. Let me emphasize again, 7'4". Yeah, that's the real deal.
All right, let's head out east.
So the East to me is very intriguing here. Like I said, Michigan, I think, as we spoke earlier, I think they are a legit 1 seed, but I think because of the injury, and there's question marks there. So I think right in their initial pod, again, that 8-9 matchup's tough, whoever they play, LSU and the Bonnies. I'm actually going to go, I think Florida State will get out of that side. I think Florida State will actually beat Michigan if Michigan gets to that matchup. I think Florida State, again, very, very strong team. Leonard Hamilton, he's proven that of the tourneys. Like he seems to most years get the most out of that, to which he has talent. So I think Michigan, unfortunately, it's not good timing, the tournament for them right now. And then, as we touched earlier, I guess I'm biased on this one, but I'm going to take UConn to get out of that side. I mean, again, it gets back to there is bias here, but James Bouknight is going to be the best player on the court any game they have, And I mean that we've seen it, especially with UConn. They do this. Like it's kind of tried and true for them. So
Yeah.
I think I'm going to say that's a UConn Florida State matchup in that Elite Eight. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think there's a real chance for UConn to actually go to the Final Four here. And as a fan, I was hoping that this is the 1 seed they got, Michigan, because again, there's some injury issues now. So
Right.
I think UConn can make that run again. I actually do.
Wow.
I really do. And quickly on that, if you saw the loss to Creighton, it was very disappointing in that Martin, Cole, and Bouknight, they didn't have good games. They shot the ball terribly, but early in the game they had about a 13-point lead, and Sonogo, the freshman big, he was dominant in the paint. He has an issue with foul trouble, and when he got a second foul, that changed the game. If he avoids foul trouble, he's a monster down there. So, like I think people aren't realizing how good this team can be. Put it that way. They have a high ceiling. So let's go Hurley and let's go Huskies.
Last but not least, what's your take on the Midwest?
So I think the Midwest is very interesting, especially the top half. Illinois is legit. They're very lucky that DeSumo is back. He was playing with the face mask today. We made a joke. He looked like Batman, and he can do some marvelous things. So he can play the role of Batman sometimes.
Yeah.
Him and Kofi Coburn, who's again an absolute beast in the center. I mean, it's basically going to take 3 guys to move him out of the paint. They're legit. But right off the bat, again, it's Loyola. I think they'll beat Loyola Georgia Tech. Not an easy game. And then what nobody would want is Oklahoma State sitting in that 4-5 matchup. Cade Cunningham is, I think the last time we spoke, remember, I think
he was one of your favorite draft prospects.
I referenced that the point that he hadn't seemed to kind of take the mantle and want to take over. That dynamic change. If you saw the game against Baylor yesterday, that narrative is gone. So I would not want to play Oklahoma State by any means. And they have Anderson, another freshman guard. He's now stepped his level. So he's like 1A. I mean, he's a flash. I mean, he's fast, he's athletic. So I think I'm gonna ride that train. I'm gonna take Cade Cunningham to get them out of that bracket. So I'm going contrarian, but I don't really think I am. Again, what I talked about with Bouknight, you got the best player on the floor. You're always going to have a good chance. So I'm going to take Oklahoma State in that bracket.
Awesome.
Oklahoma State, you're taking Purdue, you're taking UConn and Gonzaga?
That's correct.
There it is.
That's correct. And it's not necessarily trying to go against the ones, although I do. It's really not. I see potential danger in a lot of those. And like anything, someone asked me earlier, oh, who do you like to win it this year? I never know who I want to pick until I see the brackets, because matchups are everything. And Gonzaga has by far that, I think, the easiest path.
So is as far as a bracket buster for you in this whole field, is it UConn, or is there someone else that could shine through as a quote unquote traditional, like that 7 to 14 range of being a bracket buster and taking a region?
So I'm just gonna look at the brackets here and see. Let's get a little crazy with this one. Let's pick a lower seed, under a 10 seed or lower, who could make some kind of damage here. So I will start with, actually, in Gonzaga's region. It's a long shot, but UCal Santa Barbara, the Gauchos, they're very good. So like nobody sees them. Even last night, their conference finals at 11:30 at night. They're very good. So as much as I like Creighton, that is a team that they're a legit team. I believe they have only 4 losses on the year. So you want to take a flyer and put a long shot in Vegas on a team that can win some games? The Gauchos are a shot. If I go over to the South, something I touched on earlier, I can't see them making a run, but if the score is under, if the over-under on Arkansas Colgate is under 300, you might want to take the over still. Colgate scores 80 a clip. They play pretty much no defense. Arkansas is going to run up and down the court with them. But so from Colgate has some interesting potential there. But I will say again, I'll go with 12 seed there. Winthrop is really good. I believe they have 1 loss on the year. They're getting a banged up Villanova team. So again, if you want to, the 5-12 matchup is traditionally 12's farewell. There's your shot. That could be your Loyola Chicago of a couple of years ago.
And that goes up against your favorite in that region, Purdue.
Absolutely. So again, we're getting a little crazy here. This is not one predicting to go out, but a team that, let's say, wouldn't completely shock me is what I'm saying. A team that people don't realize is better than their seed. And again, it's hard to gauge this year because a lot of the out of conference games were canceled. So we didn't really get the gauge of, oh, did the Gauchos play against UConn? Did they play against Illinois? We missed those matchups. But if you've seen some of these teams play, you realize they're really good basketball teams.
I mean, if you go through the season with only one loss, you can't be some softy.
Exactly. And Winthrop is cool too. I mean, not that you follow that, but Winthrop a years back, they were a 15 seed, and I think they were playing Tennessee, who was excellent that year. And Winthrop's just that team. Like they put a good product out. So Winthrop, they lost as that 15 seed, but that's a team that you kind of trust. They've done it before. They've played well against the big boys, and I think they will do so again. So before we cap all this, I want to hear from you guys, because as much as I watch a ton of college basketball, if you know anything about it in the tournament, I might not know a darn thing by the end of this. So why don't we hear your guys' best estimates?
CProc, you want to take lead?
The notes I was making, like I've always, I mean, like my late allegiance to Southern schools. Like I look at that Clemson one, and that's kind of a mess. I would love to see them go through. I don't think they will, because they have to go through Houston, they have to go through SDSU, which the CBS guys were playing up, and then I just watched the Big Ten game in Illinois. It looked like that team that doesn't beat it. So where I don't think that one will happen. But I look at. But I also caught some of the SEC title game, and Bama just looked fun to watch. It was explosive. The highlights from the St. Bonnie's game, they looked like they were running up and down the court, so they would be fun. So, I mean, if I had to go through bing, 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 all four regions to pick one, I'm taking Gonzaga, because there's got to be a year where they take the trophy, and there has to be. So I'm going to take Gonzaga out of the West. If I'm spitballing it in the East, I kind of want to take Bama, because as much as I want to believe in UConn, like you do, their first year back, that's kind of crazy to me. So I'm going to take Bama in the East. I really do. I was going to go with Baylor in the South, but I like your take on Purdue having that built-in home court advantage that nobody else is going to have.
I didn't think about that.
So I'll go with Purdue in the South, and out in the Midwest, I'll go Illinois, just because I was kind of impressed by them, and Kofi's just such a big freak down there. Jeff, throw some darts. So throw some darts to the wall.
Yeah, I'm gonna preface this by saying I do not really follow college basketball. I do want to get into it for surely. So this is gonna be blindfolded. Darts in the dark picks.
Which means you'll probably pick better than myself and everyone
else. All right, so I'm gonna start on the East side. I'm gonna go Bama on the East.
Oh, you guys are killing me.
I'm gonna go Gonzaga for the West. Ohio State for South, right? And I'm going Clemson. That's my
bracket buster.
Yeah, that's my bracket buster.
One last thing, guys, and I didn't think about it either. So who are we picking to win it?
I gotta go Gonzaga.
Go Zags.
Yeah, gotta go.
They have to do it. They have to do it one year.
It's weird because I always root for them, and I just feel like they're such a favorite. But I do like Mark Few. It gets back to, again, I agree. Because I think they have the easier road, and that's half the battle in this tournament. So I'm actually going to agree, and I probably am going to take Gonzaga myself.
And we talked through the other favorites. They've got buzzsaws to run through. Gonzaga, as you said, has the least amount of them.
Yeah, that's like I love Baylor, but same thing. Like I could make a case for Baylor, but again, it's like you just see how many potential difficult teams these teams will have along the way, and Gonzaga just has fewer roadblocks.
Which team do you think in the other brackets puts the most fear in Gonzaga if they were to see each other?
If they got through, I still think I'd go Baylor again. I'm worried about that path. It's treacherous, but I do think head to head, I might actually put it this way. I think I'd take actually Baylor over Gonzaga in a head to head matchup. I think that they D up tenaciously. I think they provide some problems for Gonzaga that way. So again, if they got there, I actually would take Baylor, but getting back to that road for Baylor has a lot of obstacles.
Yeah, that's an all chalk run that as we've gone over today, it's got to be pretty treacherous for him.
Yeah, and again, as we said, when you look at the bracket all the time, until you see what potential roadblocks a team has, it's hard to say. Like I said, I do like Baylor a ton, and I would have picked them, but they got no favors in that bracket, not at all.
Yeah. Shoot, if they do get through, they will be tried and tested.
Correct, but it's a very tough road there.
Yeah.
And even I'm sorry, just one last thing we didn't really like Texas Tech again. I know we touched on briefly, like and Ohio State, who James, I believe you picked like that.
Yeah,
those are tough teams.
Yeah.
And Ohio State, I'll give you credit on this one. Ohio State, one of the reasons you would like Ohio State in that bracket. They have their guards basically, and I'm going to reference UConn again. When they made their runs, they've had guards who shoot 90% from the free throw line, and Ohio State is that. So if they have a lead, that game's pretty much over.
Yeah.
You put them at the line, they're going to win.
Right.
So a good pick on Ohio State, whether you watch them a ton or not. That's the reason why. Very good guard play, and again, they knock down their free throws.
So you heard it here first, guys. Pick Ohio State.
Endorsed by Greg.
Sleeper pick right there. All right, now we're gonna get into some gambling. There's certain people in the universe that like to test their might against Lady Luck, and whether win, lose, or draw, they always come back. Greg's gonna kick it with us as we see if we can give us better than a 50-50 chance with this year's bracket. This is the Hoops Boys Pod, and we'll be right back.
Now, of course, there's a large contingent in this country that takes up some space in our lives this wonderful time of year. And that is that's not only taking your bracket home around the office water cooler, but that's also making the dollar signs flow in. Watching those Vegas degenerates get your rich kids rich quick kids. Woo! I can speak.
Say that 10 times quick.
Really? So now we bring Gregors back to shine some light on who can bring home some extra green this year. And Jack, correct me if I'm wrong. You're a little different type of green when it comes to the gambling side of sports. So you be the pupil, Greg be the teacher, and I want to start off with the totals. So I want to start off with this Iowa Grand Canyon game it's a 145 total. That seems like it's ripe for a high scoring game, and Iowa's got a lofty line to cover at 14.5. Greg, James, what's your question to Greg, and Greg, what do you think about where that's going to go?
All right, I guess my first initial question is
with Iowa.
I have an overall question. Can I start there?
Sure.
All right. How are these, like what they're giving, how is that determined?
So at the sports books, there's a lot of, so the initial, there's a ton of analytics involved, and a lot of the books will, they source out, not source out, but they look for information among all the statistical sites that produce information. And honestly, like what happens is they crunch that together, and it's not some of the initial line making isn't as scientific as you think. It's guys who know the game, who watch the game, and they're trying to establish a line. So understand this. When in the old days, you'd hear people say, oh, the game is fixed. Vegas does not want to fix the game. Vegas wants one thing to happen. They want you to bet on Iowa. They want me to bet on Grand Canyon. The reason for that is the percentage, or what they call the VIG. So if there's a 50% bets on each side, it's guaranteed income for Vegas. So understand.
Okay.
So they try to set that number at where will we get the most balanced amount of betting on both teams.
Okay, I get you.
That's how the line is set. So they're not trying to deceive you. They're not, guys who lose will love telling you, oh, no, it's not true. It's mathematical, and they want you to bet one way and me to bet the other. That's baseline how it's figured out.
Okay, awesome. And
so what is your take on Iowa then?
So on Iowa, very interesting case. I feel like I've had a good read on them all year. On Iowa's good day, they'll score 100. The problem is there's some days they don't do that and they're still giving up 100. Now they've had a little bit more of an effort defensively, but I don't trust them defensively no matter what they've done lately. So any number with Iowa for me, you have to consider the over, because again, no matter how high that number is set at, they don't play a lot of defense. So that's my take on them.
So
there will be a lot of points involved in their games, no matter what.
So 70 apiece has got to be like low hanging fruit then.
I mean, Iowa's really good offensively, so I don't want to slight them. I count on Iowa to probably get close to 75-80 most nights. So if Grand Canyon, for instance, plays anything close, that goes over.
Yeah.
And with lackadaisical defense, do you think that opens up either an outright cover or a backdoor cover by the underdog Grand Canyon?
See, to me, this is interesting. So, James, something you asked about the betting. So there's also a bet called the money line, okay? Mm-hmm. So in this game, for instance, like Grand Canyon, I think the spread is 14.5. Did you say, Chase?
Yes.
So there's also a money line bet. I'm not sure what that is. And what that means is you can actually put a wager on Grand Canyon to win. So with a spread that high, let's say you put round number $100, you'll probably win 1,000 if Grand Canyon won that game.
Okay.
So to me, a team that, again, I'm not saying Grand Canyon definitely beats them by any means, but there's great value there, because a team who gives up a lot of points is obviously susceptible to their own bad shooting day. So that's one in any Iowa game this year I'd look at and say, wow, like you might want to take a shot on a team like Grand Canyon.
Okay.
Oh, that was a good guess to pull out of your butt, because they money line on the underdog Grand Canyon is 850.
There you go.
So those are the money lines right there. Okay, I get you.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, there's no money. There's no money to be made on Iowa's money line because it's 1,700.
Yeah, James, I highly advise you not to do that.
So what? I have to bet at least 1,700
to win 100.
Oh no.
So I don't think we need advanced calculus to figure out. This is not probably the safest bet.
That's not it.
No. There you go. You're learning already.
Yep.
James, one last thing touching on this overall, as discussed earlier, if you follow historically over the tournament, underdogs cover, underdogs pay. And because every time we think we see, there's no, and myself included, you look at a game, there's no way this team's going to lose. I can roll off 1,000. I remember Derek Coleman in Syracuse losing to Richmond, Jamal Tinsley, Iowa State losing to Hampton. These happen all the time. We just don't know which one. So the point is, if you're a math guy and just want to follow the stats, you're better off taking underdogs across the board.
Right. Okay, awesome.
Kicking over to the next one, a very lofty total, and not the highest total in the first round. We'll get to that in a minute. But another high one is Ohio State and Oral Roberts, 154.5 total. And looking over all the first round matchups, the top seeds are consistently, which is pretty common year to year anyway. They're all getting 20-point lines. Ohio State is not. They're only giving 16.5. Greg, do you think this is a bit of disrespect to Ohio State that they don't have this lofty 20-point line, especially with such a high total?
I actually don't really, and I think like Ohio State, they're funny to me. I'm being honest when I say they're a tough team for me to read, because they have some days where where they're phenomenal. They're lights out. I mean, they can light it up. Washington, their guard, went for over 30 today. But there's sometimes like it's not that they can't play. Like even the Purdue game, a potential warning flag for them. Travion Williams lit them up. They didn't have an answer for him. So I think exactly that. Like again, touching what I did with Iowa, they can give up points and they can score them. So I don't think it's crazy. I think it's actually and I think it's a little respect to Oral Roberts as well. So I don't think it's outlandish one bit. Ohio State, as talented as they are, has been sporadic. I think they have 8 losses on the season. And as good as they are, it just tells you they're not automatic. So I don't think that spread is outlandish.
Oral Roberts, by the way, money line plus 1,025.
Yeah, and again, James, again with this, I can't tell you like that's the one, but there's probably one of these games that hits. Like it almost always does. So maybe it's Oral Roberts.
Right. Go to Oral Roberts.
Get an easy G. Now, Greg, I want to touch base on something we briefly talked about in the previous segment. You said Arkansas and Colgate, they're going to run up and down the floor. This game has the highest total in the first round at 162. Now, because of both teams having more of a proficiency rubbing on the floor, a 9.5 point spread seems a little high too. Is this both an easy total ride the over on and also a kind of a value underdog to take with a higher line?
So to start off the over under, that's a number that you don't see hardly ever
in college
in a college game. But Colgate, I think they're second in the nation scoring. And again, the Patriot League is not. It's not the Big East. It's not the ACC, but they can score. So, and they play the Matador defense, as in it's not there. And Arkansas is really good and really so. Starting off with that, like is even 162. I look at that. If Colgate plays anything close to what they do offensively, I really think Arkansas is scoring 100 in that game. So if Colgate can get to 63, was it 162 and a half?
162. Yeah.
I need 63 at a Colgate. So I'm going to take that. The
spread. Do the quick math. That also
that's a tough one to me here because
spread rather.
A game, for instance, that like I don't think it's anywhere in the middle. My point being is I could see Arkansas pulling them out of the building early. If Colgate doesn't shoot the 3 well, they're in big trouble, right? So that could be a 40-point game. But on the flip side, Colgate can score. So like if they are hitting from 3, they could actually make that an interesting game because they can score. But you see what I mean? That game is very volatile to me. Like I don't think that's close to the spread. I think Arkansas wins by 35, or it's probably a last possession game because Colgate has hung in. And so that lot of outcomes on that one. Volatility is not always in the bettor's best interest. I think that game is very volatile.
Now, that is very true.
Enjoy the shootout again, though. Enjoy the shootout. There will be a ton of points. I guarantee you that.
Now, of course, those are touching more on finding big lines to ride. When it comes down to finding some value dogs to take, you've got. I know you love Texas Tech, but Utah State's got a pretty low line to cover. Georgetown. We talked a little off air about them being a dog that a lower seed that might be the favorite, which they actually are the dog going into the matchup. Now they're both giving 5. Are those both value dogs to take with low lines? Or just take them outright?
I'll start with Georgetown. I think as we get closer to the tournament, I'd be very surprised if that line doesn't move down. I think it's a great matchup for Georgetown, and not that I hate Colorado per se. But Georgetown is playing very well. Colorado, good team, but they're not unbeatable by any stretch of it. I actually think that's a closer spread. I think that's a prime upset from. So, James, again, what I would do in this instance, the 5 points I think is great value, and I would take the money line on them as well, which I don't have it in front of me, but I'm guessing you put 100 on Georgetown to win that game, you're probably winning 240, 250. So, Georgetown, excellent value there as far as I'm concerned. And Chase, okay. What was the other 5-12 we were?
The Utah. That one's not a 5-12. I don't believe.
6-11. I believe
6-11. Yeah, that's a 6-11. But that's Utah State, Texas Tech.
Well, I guess the best way to put it, James, another kind of tip would be that's a 5-point spread or 5-point or 6-point. They're 2 defensive oriented teams. So what does that tell me? Is that there's probably not a ton of points in that game to begin with. So 5 points in a defensive game, that becomes a lot. It's not Arkansas or Colgate. So in that instance, I do see value. As much as I like Texas Tech, I think 5's a little bit much there.
Believe it or not, the money lines for both of these games are exactly the same. 175 for the dogs, 210 for the favorites.
I think Georgetown is the way better of the two, but I think there is value in both of them. Yes.
Okay.
We've spent a little bit of time today dumping on Villanova. Having to go up against a one-loss Winthrop squad and having some injury woes. Is that they're sitting as a 6.5 point favorite? Is that an easy Winthrop dog to take?
I think 100% it is, and I feel bad. I'm not trying to dump on Villanova. You can't lose your leader, your point guard, and they haven't won since he's been out. And you're playing a one-loss Winthrop team who's very good. They're just a good team, period. So I think that would be even with him, I think Villanova would win. But without him, I very well think Winthrop. I actually think they win that game. So I think Winthrop is excellent value there, and it's not because it's trendy. Again, it's college. You don't have the depth as the NBA. Your leader, your point guard goes down. You're in trouble, and they've shown it already.
Actually, despite having the plus odds, they're actually a lower money line than Nova. Believe it or not.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
And I think that's another example. And James touching on another lesson here. You'll see a lot of line movement between now and when that game tips off. And I think what they call the sharps, the heavy hitters in the gambling world, I think you'll see a lot of action on Winthrop because they're all aware of this. And I think your better value is to bet Winthrop now if you can, because I think by Thursday, Friday, it's going to be less.
So if I was to make a bet today with the lines that I own now, I'm locked into those lines.
Correct. But that line, and it happens often, if you have injury news, if you have or just betting trends, if everyone's betting Winthrop, you're going to see that line drop. So people are trying. Vegas will now try to get bets on the Villanova side. So my advice was, go put your million on Winthrop today, James. Don't wait for Thursday, Friday.
Well, I do have another question. Winthrop's record is they only have one loss, right?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
But why aren't they ranked higher?
I mean, they play in a smaller conference.
Okay.
They're going against a traditional Big East powerhouse. So people don't get the visibility of a team like Winthrop. Or whatever the spread would have been, I really like Winthrop. That's a good team. But again, especially this year because they're so limited out of conference games, nobody's seen them. So you're not going to put Winthrop as a favorite against Villanova because they never. You get what I'm saying. It's visibility issues.
Okay.
Really.
Got you.
And they don't. And quite frankly, as much as I like Winthrop, I'm the first one to admit I haven't seen them against a big powerhouse either.
Okay.
So we don't know how that translates. I'm just betting Winthrop's a very good basketball team, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll play well whoever they play against.
Okay, I got you. That makes sense to me.
Now, to round out my dog picks, I would definitely not recommend putting money on going on the money line in this Alabama Iona matchup. However, the Iona does have a veteran, gritty coach in Rick Pitino, and Alabama, very hot school, given 17.5. Do you think the grittiness of Pitino translate to that being, even though Iona's probably not going to win, an easy dog pit to make some easy money on the side with the spread?
Coaching is huge in college, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, Alabama, Nate Oates of Alabama came from Buffalo, very good coach himself, but absolutely you have to consider that a possibility. Tino's been there a million times. He has a good team. And something very interesting about Iona this year, so the MAC conference, it's very bizarre what they did. So with the COVID issues, almost no teams played the same amount of games. When the MAC did their seeding this year, they seeded how many wins you have. So Siena was at the top of the conference, and they got totally hosed. Iona's seed is at 7 because Iona missed 6-7 games. There's no way Iona should have been that low a seed.
Okay.
But because they did that differently, Iona even got less notoriety because of that. Iona's a pretty good basketball team. So it's not shocking. And Bama, as good as they are, offensively, they can be sporadic. So, yes, I would take a shot on Iona. Mind you, some of these games it gets away early, but I do. I think there's actually value in Iona. I absolutely do.
All right, Gregors, thank you for answering our questions. Now, next time we want to get some info. We want to get some bold picks from you. Let's imagine James's first time in Vegas, first tournament, throwing down the green. What are three good, an outright, a total, a long shot? What are some good entry level bets to get him going?
Okay,
Help me out here, Greg.
All right, James, we're going to make you a millionaire here. So to start off the tourney, we want you to have a bankroll to have the rest of the weekend. The key is getting off to a good start. The old term house money. Let's play with it.
Right.
Right off the bat, you have two traditional powerhouses in one of the playing games, UCLA and Michigan State. Mm-hmm. Chase and I talked about this a month ago. Michigan State, who struggled early, if they got it together in time and they get out of the Big Ten, they get out of that war every night that they're playing in, I think Michigan State right off the bat, go with Izzo. He's tried and true, especially when they're underseeded or basically not a favorite. I think it's a 1.5 point spread. Let's win some money on Michigan State right off the bat so you don't have to dig into the cash machine or the ATM, okay?
Okay.
Get you that to start.
Let's go.
What's the what's another one? A total, an under and over. Well, a lot of people are going to take overs nowadays. So what is there any unders that we could sneak in and win some green on?
So something you just touched on, I think it might be a bit of a sucker bet, and this is a very low. So you have Georgia Tech and Loyola Chicago at 124.5, which basically 63-62, which is not a high score at all. That would cover the over. The problem is these two teams not only are very good defensively, and that's their strong suit, they're aggressive. They play to it. So it's not necessarily par offense. They're very deliberate. They're very methodical. So I think in that game, when we talked about Arkansas Colgate being a shootout, this is the opposite. So I actually would, James, I don't want you to put all that money you won on this one.
Yeah.
But I think I would play the under here. I really could see a 52-50 game as a final. So aesthetically speaking, not the best, but it actually is a really good matchup because they're two teams that play D constantly.
Okay, awesome.
And real quick before we log off, let's say he's been going for a couple days. He's pulling some dollars, and he just wants to say, all right, let me just find some long shot to take me to the promised land. What's a bullseye that stands out as someone to really take home a lofty number on?
All right, well, I think James, I think we gave him a good start. I think he's going to be in really good shape, but we want to make him a millionaire, right? So James, here's what I think. I think we look over to Cleveland State. Now Houston, who's the 2 seed, very good team. No discredit to them, but I've seen Cleveland State play. They're a pretty solid squad. You're going to get them at plus 1,200. So hey, when you're up 10,000 by that time, put 100 on Cleveland State, wins you 1,200. I say we give it a shot. Great value there. Team can play.
All right, awesome. Hey, I'm Vegas ready. Let's go.
I think you're ready for big time. And as we say that, we'll probably lose every one of those and have to rebound, but that's all right.
Right.
We've got a solid foundation, James.
It's always next year too.
Exactly.
Well, that's a wrap for this show today, guys. Thanks for kicking it with us. Thank you, Greg, for being part of the show. Your knowledge is invaluable. And if you want to reach out to us, hit us up on our socials at Hoops Boys Pod at both Instagram and Twitter, and just drop us a line, and we'll get back to you. I'm headed to Vegas. I don't know what you guys are doing, but hopefully next show I have some greenbacks to show. Until next time, Hoops Boys Pod.
Cash money.
Thank you, guys. Have fun. Best time of the year. Enjoy it.